Uh, uh, Aaron and Brian, you asked me to tell you some stories about Ken of our growing up years together, and there were so many of them I didn't know where to start, and I'm horrible at it takes me forever to write down my thoughts, so I thought maybe I could just send you a video. Uh, I hope this works. I think I can get it on a YouTube channel and send it to you. So let's hope this works. So uh, I don't even know where to start. Ken and I met in 1966 at University of Houston in an engineering drawing course. This is one of those courses where there's a big slide rule, this giant slide rule up front. That's where we learn slide rule. But it's also, back before computer graphics, you used angles and trig more than anything to like you could look at a picture of or look at a structure or a piece of equipment or machine, and using all the mathematics you could rotate that, but you had to do it with your drawing and with your T-square and all those triangles, and your dad was excellent at it. So some of us kind of gravitated over to him to figure out how it was. And then we found out that he was from Joliet, Illinois, and we had a little connection to Joliet. We went to a Carmelite high school. Carmelites are, like Jesuits, an order of priests. And the Carmelites also had a high school in Joliet, Illinois. So when he said Joliet, we connected it. So there was a little bit of connection with your dad. So he showed us how to do engineering drawings, and he was a hell of a lot smarter than we were. And it's funny, these are going to be random thoughts. Your dad was, as you know, an excellent student. And he was smart. Oh my God. He got his master's degree faster than his bachelor's and his master's faster than I got my bachelor's degree. We both were in engineering. My brother Terry bailed out of engineering, but I held on. But anyway, Ken was smart enough to get his master's at the same time or faster than I got my bachelor's degree. I got all kinds of notes here. In that class, some of us used to sneak out or skip the class, and there was a little bar across the street. It was in a black neighborhood, but there was this beautiful, like Amazon woman bartender. So we'd say, Kent, let's go over there. He would not go. He would not skip class. He would not leave class. But on Saturday night lookout, he could party. But that was the only time. Another thing at U of H was handball. We were introduced to handball. So this was handball, not on this beautiful, totally enclosed thing with that little ball and you wore gloves. This is like a back wall with partial side walls, and you played it without gloves and a little bit of a bigger black ball. And in the evening after class, Ken would play with us, or we'd all play together. We'd go over there on Saturdays, I guess, and play until we just about dropped. And of course, my brother Terry, my twin brother Terry, we were all together in college, and we'd play. And your dad, as you know, was very competitive, so he liked nothing better than to talk about a clean king boy sweep, so that he could beat me and beat Terry, and he said, "Ooh, yeah, I like it. Ooh, clean king boy sweep, clean king boy sweep." He loved that. We didn't have a lot. I'll tell another story. In class, my brother Terry, yeah, he was almost engaged when we were 18. Uh, and Ken would tease him about it. So Terry, the third semester, I forgot what it was supposed to get married, and Ken was teasing him about it. But I think it was just after the first semester of college, Ken went home and came back with Colette. So he got married at Christmas time, 6 months before Terry did. So we had to tease him about his teasing Terry. So Ken and Colette are there, and Terry and Dixie, and Dave and Sherry came down. And so we didn't have a lot of money. Our entertainment was Bluebell ice cream. There's no ice cream like Bluebell homemade vanilla ice cream. Maybe we'd have a 6-pack of beer, and we'd go to Dixie and Terry's, and Dixie would make this wonderful queso with Rotel tomatoes. So our entertainment was the ice cream and or the chips and the beer at Terry and Dixie's. It was wonderful. Talked about basketball game. Talked about competitive. My dad on Sunday mornings, ever since we were growing up, he'd make pancakes. So he called them hot cakes. And he made them with Malt-O-Meal. I don't know whether you know what Malt-O-Meal is, but they were delicious. So I have a picture, I couldn't find it, of Dave and Sherry and your mom and dad sitting around my dad's table eating his pancake, eating his hot cakes. It was so much fun. I talked about what a great student he was. Okay, he came down from Joliet because his Uncle Dean was a math teacher at University of Houston, and Ken wanted to have something to do with NASA. So I don't know whether he got a scholarship, but he did. He was a co-op student or something at NASA. So NASA was really big for Ken, and he'd go down and work, and I didn't know that much about what he was doing. But when we were all together at his apartment, his and Colette's apartment, when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon, Ken had gathered a bunch of cherry bombs. And we weren't the only ones, of course. So they were on a second floor apartment, maybe even third floor, I don't know. So we started lighting cherry bombs and pitching them off the balcony when Armstrong landed. We were perhaps a bit of a nuisance, but your dad was overjoyed with the landing on the moon. That was pretty cool. There were all kinds of trips. I remember one trip to New York. Your mom and dad and Terry and Dixie came to visit Cece and I in New York, and we had this little apartment, so we were all getting ready in the apartment, went into the city, and I just remember this part of it. So we're in Washington Square. If you've ever, it's down in the Village, Greenwich Village, and it's where NYU is, or parts of NYU. And anyway, we got panhandled, and these guys were, let's say they were obnoxious, and I was, I said, all right, well, I gave them a quarter, get out of here, and they were very persistent, and your dad was getting really pissed off. And I think he was ready to do some duking. But they were really forceful and obnoxious, and part of me wanted to do some duking too, but your dad was pissed, and I have this picture of him. We're riding home in the subway, so I lived in New Jersey. We lived in New Jersey, so we had to take a bus and a subway to get into the city, and a bus and a subway back. And there's a picture, Ken, I don't know if it was in the bus or the subway. He's got this kind of cap on that, it was my cap that he'd borrowed, and he's got a very grim look on his face. So I think he's thinking he wished he'd duped some of those guys. Anyway, I can't find that picture either, but the trip to New York was really fun. I'm going out. I remember when your dad went to work for the teaching at the Naval Graduate School in Carmel. I got some great pictures of us. I guess it was Monterey, Carmel. But he asked me to, I got to sit in on one of his classes, and I remember him afterwards making some pretty negative comments about some of the students, because your dad, he was a student, and he said, all these guys want to do is get a master's. It's a piece of paper, and they get a bump up in their pay grade or something like that. So I just happen to remember that one because I was seeing some pictures of Carmel. But your dad was not happy with some of those students at the Naval Graduate School. Your mother might get mad at me for talking about this one, but one day Ken said, I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you. So he came over and he sits down and he starts to draw these little circles and diagrams. Well, Ken had got seduced in a way into Amway. I don't know whether you guys know what this is. We're selling soap, and he, one of his electrical engineering friends convinced him we could make a lot of money selling soap, which is what Amway was. And all of a sudden, Ken has got all of us, me and Terry and a whole bunch of his buddies, and we're all trying to be millionaires selling soap. And one day, of course, now we all got soap coming and all kinds of products coming out of our closets. And Ken shows up with a brand new GTO. Oh my God, he loved that car. As if Amway paid for that GTO, which wasn't exactly the case. But anyway, it was a gorgeous car. Another story about the GTO is that it had a blemish in the paint. And Ken had taken back, and then he said, Tom, come on. I want you to talk forcefully to those people. So it had a blemish in the paint, and they finally said, we can't fix it. What do you expect me to do? We didn't build a car. Anyway, it really ticked him off that they tried, but it never did get it right. Another time, so this has to do with the GTO. I don't know, several times in our lives together when we're still in Houston, I remember we drove to Chicago and back in that GTO. The one time I really felt guilty about this. It was a long, hard slog, driving 24 hours straight or 22 hours straight, 22 hours back. And I fell asleep in the back seat while Ken was driving, and I know I was whining because the trip was so long and so tired. We drove all through and your dad did all of the driving, or maybe I drove for a couple hours. But after that trip, we didn't see him for several weeks, so I think he was a little bit pissed at me, and I always felt like a wimp. I didn't man up, but I was wiped out in the back seat, but your dad did the whole driving that way. Okay, Houston, 1966. Astros were playing in the Astrodome. I think I told Brian this story. We learned that if you donated blood, that you'd get free box seat tickets. And so we didn't have a lot of money. So somehow we managed to get Colette and Cece to go donate their blood so we could get tickets. I think eventually we got tough enough to where we could donate our own blood. But anyway, that was a little adventure, giving blood to get Astros tickets. So I got a picture of this. I think I told Brian this one. So we start running this 73, 74, I forgot who the guy who won the Olympic marathon. So running gets big. So we all start running. And I think it was 76, 77. Ken is in Champaign. Ken and Colette are in Champaign. We're in Chicago. And so he comes down. We decide we're going to run this 12-mile race. and I don't know why these things stick on my head, but so he came down a couple of weeks earlier. We're going to do 12 miles in Oak Park where I lived, and a buddy of mine was running with us. And I don't think your dad had been training quite as much as he said he had. Anyway, so we're finishing the 8 miles. We still got 4 to go. And my buddy, George Parr, stops and he says, Tom, I think we ought to stop here at 8. I think Ken's dragging a little bit. So I slowed down and I said, Ken, we're going to stop now. And he got this big look on his face and he said, don't mess with me now. He didn't say mess. It was a 4-letter word, but it wasn't mess. I'll leave this to your imagination. Don't mess with me now. I'm trying to be nice because Coletta might get mad at me if I use bad words. But he said, don't mess with me now. But the word wasn't mess. So we stopped, and he was overjoyed. But to this day, if somebody says something like they're building up my expectations, I'll say, don't mess with me now. Don't kid me now. Don't tease me. This is serious. I say that to Kathy all the time. But it all comes from your dad. And he had this big look on his face. There's another one that he said, that's better. That's better. I'm not going to tell that story, but unless it's in person. You had to be there. But I cannot hear the words, that's better, or don't mess with me now, although mess is not the word. Don't mess with me now, without thinking of your dad. And I use both those lines all the time. Anyway, maybe you had to be there, but those are a couple of funny times. Anyway, trips together, backpacking, oh my God. We decided to go backpacking in the Rockies. And I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but I planned the trip, and I talked with because I had been once, and so I said, we could do this together. So, and this is Colette and your dad and Cece and I, we can make this trip together. So I think they were out in Denver, and I drove this little Volkswagen Jedi. What was it? A Golf. It was diesel. So this would have been around 78, and you drive it into Colorado. Of course, we had all the backpacks stacked on it, and we were getting honked at because, in the mountains, of high elevation, the diesel would put out smoke. So that was a different story. But we got to the Rocky Mountains. We parked the car, and packing all those packs on it. We had way overpacked, and I think our packs were closing in on 50 pounds. But so your mom and Cece, these little women, they got these big packs on their back, and Ken and I are macho. Come on now, let's go, come on. You know how your dad talks. Come on now, come on. Don't wimp out on me. Sometimes he'd use a different word. So we marched up, and it was a forced march. I told them, we're not great. We haven't been a lot of hiking, but they planned this trip for us. The first day was torturous. We hiked up. So we finally, after like 6 or 7 hours, now ask your mom about this. That is not exaggeration. It took us a long time to get to that first camp spot. So we get up there, and we start pitching the tent, and the hail comes, the wind comes. And basically, we just crawled, we couldn't get the tents up. We crawled under the canvas of the tent and just waited out the storm. And so we finally, the storm ends, there's hail everywhere, the wind is blowing, it kind of calms down. We got the tents up a little bit and ate peanut butter, and then we started thinking about bears, and we had read all this stuff about, you have to put your food up in trees and all this. So we kind of hung the food up, but probably not far enough, and I know Cece was freaking out about bears, and anyway, we get up the next morning, and I marched up to the next campsite, which was like a 5 minute walk or 10 minute walk. And come on, let's go. And they all, Ken and Colette and Cece both say, we're going down. We're going down. We just got a little bit more to go. But anyway, we went down and we checked into a Holiday Inn or something for the next 2 days rather than camping. We stayed at a Holiday Inn, had nice beds, nice shower. And anyway, I asked Ken what he told his people at work. And he said he never said anything about us coming down early. He said, he got a little bit dramatic, and he said, we had some weather. That's the way it gets. We had a little weather. Like, it was hell, but we braved it. We had a little weather. So that's another line. We had some weather. Anyway, it resonated with me. I talked about the clean King Boy sweep. That was in handball, basketball, boxing one time. I don't know how we got boxing gloves. There were a bunch of these engineering students, some from the high school I went to, who weren't big athletes. But anyway, we started boxing, and your dad was pretty good. He was an athlete, but Terry bloodied his nose, and I remember Terry got him in the nose pretty good, and it bloodied, and so he backed out for a little while. But when we were doing this, the other guys from my high school, they didn't want to do it anymore. We kept boxing, but those guys backed out. I'd written down about this New Mexico trip. So this is Aaron and Taylor's very early ages. So was your parents in California? Oh, maybe they were in Phoenix? I don't remember. Maybe it was Scottsdale. But we met in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Is that it? Or Ruidoso, New Mexico. And this is the southernmost ski slope in the country where they actually get enough snow to ski. But this was in the summer, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And the only reason I mention this is I just remember, I don't know whether it was Aaron or Taylor, and they're all like 3 or 4, and we're kind of marching up the side of a mountain, and Aaron and my son Alex are about the same age, and they must have been 3 or 4 or 5, and then so Aaron and Alex are about the same age. And then Taylor and Annie are about the same age. Annie's a little younger than Taylor, but Taylor walking up this hill, holding Annie's hand so she can make it up there. And then there's pictures of the 4 of them, all with ice cream cones in front of this ice cream plate. Anyway, I don't know why I brought that up. The pictures are so cute. Okay, I talked about the Naval Graduate School. I could go on and on. I loved your dad. Oh my God. Anyway, of course we have your dad. He started studying philosophy. I was into God a little bit. It was a little bit of a mystery. I was reading Hans Kung and Edward Schillebeck's, and your dad was reading philosophy. We'd have these little discussions, and he tried to get me to read Plato's Republic, and I don't think I've got through that to this day. And I'd quote something, and he'd quote something else. So we continued to do that via text, and I think one of the last text he sent me, this is it. This is not too long ago. This may have been May. He said, "A Sunday ponder, Jung speaking of the nature of God. Yahweh's behavior, which from a human point of view is so intolerable, is the behavior of an unconscious being who cannot be judged morally. And what I think he's talking about is you read the Old Testament and, God is flooding the world and he's turning this whole town to a stone, and and Ken loved to quote Job. So Ken would quote Job to me, and I'd throw him back one of Jesus's New Testament lines about love thy neighbor and blessed are the poor. Then he'd go back and quote Job. Here's another one. This was right before that line. Along a more theological line, he texted me, was pondering some over the flood, and I wondered if the fishes were drowned too. Would you know? He said. If the fishes were drowned too, would you know? Anyway, he had a great sense of humor. When there's so many memories, but when your dad laughed, a full belly laugh, especially if it was a little bit of a naughty joke or something, he'd go, "Oh my God!" He'd say, "Oh my God!" and he like a little kid. I don't know why I thought about that. He got into golf lately, and it was. I got into golf when I was about 53 or 54, and I didn't really get into it. My brother Terry was into it, and he really got into it, but I had to play because of work and everything. So when Ken started talking about golf, I think he said he'd take up golf when he retired. Or anyway, but Thomas, I guess, and Christopher, I don't remember, got him into golf. So I think he was betting on golf a little bit. So he sent me a text that he had 100, I think it was for the Masters when Dustin Johnson won. That year, it was COVID time, so we came out of COVID, and they had it in November. So he texted me that he had 100 on Jordan Spieth and 100 on Bryson DeChambeau. Well, after the Masters, of course, they lost. Dustin Johnson won. And he confused Dustin with Justin Thomas and Dustin Johnson. And I teased him. I said, "You got to get your names right." He said, "I know them when I sees them." He texted me that. But anyway, when after that Masters, he texted something about, I hates him. In other words, he'd lost this money, so he said, "I hate Jordan Spieth." He said he's probably an Aggie or a Mormon or something, and he said, "And I hate Bryson with that stupid cap he wears." Anyway, so he lost the bet, so he was a little bit pissed off at Jordan and Bryson. That was pretty funny. Oh, another time. I still don't play a lot of golf, but we play a little bit, and so I think he said, "What do you shoot?" And I sent him a scorecard, and I think I shot a 47 for 9 or something, which is pretty good for me. So I sent him that, and his text was, "Most awesome score." He said, "Thomas would count you as a beer golfer." He said, "I'm 9 strokes away from that coveted moniker." So he was really hoping to get to the coveted moniker of beer golfer. And he said, Thomas wouldn't let him call him a beer golfer. He said, "Thomas is stern that way." So I guess Thomas was pretty serious about the way he played golf. Another quote that he's recently sent me is, "Man is of the nature of his faith. What his faith is, that verily he is." And I think that's from the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very wonderful 3,000-year-old Hindu scripture. We're very much we're part of a meditation community, but we use that scripture all the time. So I was a little surprised when he sent that, and I looked it up. It is from the Bhagavad Gita. So your dad was always a thinker. I talked about Job. I don't know, we would go, especially with, so your dad, I never, pulling out of, your mom and dad pulling out of Houston, I think it was 71. Was Brian, were you born in 71 or 72? I think it might have been 71. I can't remember, but I just remember your mom and dad pulling out of their apartment with that GTO loaded with this tiny little baby, Brian. You couldn't have been more than a few months old, heading up to begin his PhD at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and was us waving to him. So you took off. They took off to Chicago or south of Chicago, and shortly after that, I took off to New York, and that was kind of the story of our relationship over 50 years. You probably know the story. He went up to Champaign, got his PhD, and went to the East Coast, Baltimore, and had trouble with that job, and then came back to University of Illinois to do a postdoc. In the meantime, I got sent from New York to Chicago, so there was another 2 or 3 years where we were only 150 miles apart, and that was so much fun going back and forth to Champaign. Sometimes we take the trip by train, and sometimes your mom and dad would pick us up. And I remember, Brian, we've told you this story before. Ken and I would be in charge of you, and we get a pocket full of quarters, and we put you in front of that pinball machine. And oh God, you loved it. But it gave us a chance to sit down and philosophize, drink a little beer, but talk about what we wanted to talk about. And you would sit there just loading that game with quarters. That was real fun. Another time, oh God, we were out and it's wintertime. We had you on a sled, and the sled, you loved it. One time we took you up and we put you on that sled and you went down, but this time you landed in a bush and you were crying. Oh my God, we were mortified. We dashed down and you were all right. I think there might have been a little scrape on your face or something, but we were deathly afraid Colette and Kent and Cece were going to get mad at us because we didn't take good care of you. But I think you survived it just fine. There's so many stories. I remember one time, this is at University of Houston, Ken, I think my brother Terry and I, we got tickets to see the first Muhammad Ali Frazier fight. And, it's a macho thing. And so we went and, we all came out of, Frazier won that fight, by the way. That was really, really a good one. And your dad played football, and Terry and I played football. Football was a big deal for us early, but I just lost total interest in it. And your dad did too. My brothers were still watching football, so it was like a 20-year period where there's no interest at all. But then, when Aaron and Taylor started playing, I think he said something about Taylor saying something to him about, well, I like football. So he got very much into football because his sons wanted to talk about it. And anyway, so he would talk to me about football, and I didn't have a clue. And then one time, he and I met by ourselves in Las Vegas. And that's the only time I think I've been to Las Vegas. But I lost my shirt. We bet on basketball games. We bet on football games. We played poker. stayed up late. Anyway, I'd forgotten about that trip. I think that's enough. I loved your dad. Loved. Anyway, that's enough. I love you guys. God bless you. Your dad will forever be in my heart. Anyway, bye.